Yeah, thanks for being with me. I appreciate it.
Sure, I'm okay.
Can you hear me just fine?
Yeah.
Great. Thanks. I really appreciate it. Last time you were on was almost 100 episodes ago. It was actually 99 episodes ago. But
wow.
You were one of the first guests that came on, and you and a handful of guests I was till this day I'm still very appreciative of, because really at that time podcasts were kind of everywhere, and for people who are as accomplished and as respected as you and some of my other early guests to come on a show that barely got put together and only had a couple episodes, I really appreciate just the fact that you guys were nice enough of people and guests to come on and talk to nobody. So I really appreciated that. And
oh, good, sweet. I remember back in the day when all these digital magazines and things were coming out, and I was one of the only cyber culture kind of thinkers out there. I'd always end up like on the very first issue of one magazine or the other before they've got any subscribers or anything. It was always funny to me because I've even gotten on covers of things like like UK Wired or something. But back when the cultures were so small, before they're what they become. But that's kind of a fun place to be, though. You're at the unfolding. You're in that fresh new territory. So it's a blessing, really, more than a curse, I think.
Oh yeah, it's always cool. I mean, you see it a lot with music, how people love bands when they're up and coming, and then when they make it, it's always awesome because you feel like you have this more intimate relationship with them because you knew them when they were playing little local clubs or when they were playing in hole in the wall bars. And so it's cool to kind of have jump on this ship early and then eventually see it grow into something. So it's really cool. But the thing with podcasting is that it was just, and it's funny because I guess we might as well start the conversation there because it kind of leads into that. And I've had like Thaddeus Russell on. I think it was Thaddeus Russell that I had a conversation about this with in regards to is it a good thing or bad thing that technology gives everybody a voice and gives everybody opportunity to create something and be creative. And if this was 50, 60, 100 years ago, I'd never have the opportunity to start a podcast, talk to people all over the world, and let people all over the world download this show and connect with all these people. So it's great because of that, but in a way there's almost so much going on that it's impossible to keep track of everything. I mean, I'm a huge podcast fan, and one of the reasons I started one was because I really believed in I guess the title of the show, the ripple effect, and this idea that we can much like yourself, what you do, only you do it in a much more successful way, spark thought and spark conversations and get people to think outside the box and just share different ideas and different perspectives. And I really believe that even if that's all we do to contribute, that's something. And I work a kind of a unfulfilling job, a typical blue collar guy. We have a little family owned construction company. Kind of felt like there's more I could do to contribute to the world. I do music, but I was an unsuccessful musician, and it was just one of those things where I'm like, what? I think podcasting is a way I can connect with people. I had a couple friends that were interesting that I could have on, and we could have some conversations, and hopefully some people would listen. And so it's just one of those things where it's awesome that we have this platform. But in a way, much like you talk about, and I know like a conversation you had with Jason Silva that I heard once, it seemed and it seems a lot like a lot of the conversations people have with you, like you have this love-hate relationship with technology, right? Like you like it because there are some things we can do that benefit humanity, like this, and get exposed to different ideas and different people and different arts and stuff like that. But there's also a downfall to it, correct?
Yeah, I mean, well, everything's that way. For podcasts, I mean, it's great that everyone has, access to the technology, but not everyone should be podcasting. It's like when I said back when we said the same thing about blogs. Just because everyone has access to a blog doesn't mean everyone should be blogging. it's gotten so easy to broadcast our thoughts and feelings that it sometimes it makes us feel more competent to do things that look like journalism or that look like public intellectual activity or that look like sharing facts, even though they're not. You know, and of course the ultimate example of the "here comes everybody" phenomenon is the Trump campaign. Here's a guy who's, I play this on TV, maybe I can do this for real, or it's not even free. It's what Daniel Borstein would call, a pseudo event. There was this pseudo campaign going on, and then the pseudo event can actually overtake reality. So that it does happen. But with podcasts, it's funny for me. I feel like, and I started a podcast recently called Team Human, and I feel a little bit guilty about having one because I've got access to media. I can write a piece and get it on a big website or something, or I can work hard to get a documentary on Frontline, and that, maybe it feels on some level inappropriate for me to then go make my own podcast when it's the only medium available to some. But then I decided it's okay though, because all I'm really doing is kind of letting go of the sort of incumbent advantage, and engaging more at the civic level. This is where, and with complete freedom that I don't have. If you write a piece for CNN, they can change the thing or frame the thing in a way that might not be what you want. Even if you want to do a show for NPR, they want to clean it up on a certain level so it's somehow either explicitly or implicitly supporting a worldview that maybe needs to be challenged more than supported.
Yeah, absolutely. But I definitely think that any avenue you can get your ideas out, the better, because there are some people who listen to podcasts and don't read, or listen to podcasts and don't watch documentaries. I mean, I'm one of those people that I do a lot of commuting. So for me, podcasting was a great way of taking a drive that I, would normally be a complete waste of my time and a complete waste of the day, or I'd be making, just work phone calls and or thinking about work or calling, taking care of some business stuff over the phone. I could use that drive and listen to something that was thought provoking and get some type of, it's like after you're done with school, you almost feel like your brain's that one muscle that you struggle to find ways to exercise it. Like we get stuck in these routines, and I just felt like as time was going by, I was getting dumber, because I just wasn't getting any mental, and a lot of it is just the fact that, and you talk about this, and it's a theme that I absolutely love that you talk about often, is this idea that like we really need to start thinking about what is the purpose of technology and who is it serving. And we don't have to live in a world where we work, our whole lives, invest all our best years and energy and sweat, blood, and tears to a company so they can make, every quarter make gains and constantly keep growing and make maximum profit. And then we cross our fingers by the time it's time to retire that we have a little bit of health left where we can finally enjoy, our life. Like, it just seems ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, that's, the way I write about it, it's kind of a 600-year-old story. This is, that was the goal of the industrial age, was to, prevent people really from becoming happy members of a peer-to-peer enabled middle class. There was this brief period of time in the late Middle Ages when the peasants were getting wealthy. Who knows what would have happened if it had been allowed to continue. The peasants got wealthy. They traded back and forth using local currencies. They had so much extra wealth, they started to build cathedrals in their towns as a way of investing in the future. And that, the problem with it was that the wealth was completely distributed. the wealth couldn't be monopolized by the aristocracy. And, the aristocracy had been used to being the wealthiest people in their villages and towns and cities for hundreds of years or 1,000 years. So, they undid it with new legal structures, with the chartered monopoly, which made it illegal for people to do business, or with central currency, which forced this growth economy that we're living in today. And the part that always surprises me is that people in business and economics and banking and finance, they have no idea about any of this stuff. They think that these are just, the economic laws of nature. They don't realize that these are rules that were written by, Moorish accountants in 12 and 1300s that we've just accepted as the way business is done. And you would think in a digital age that we would adopt a more programmatic mentality, that we would think, oh, we could reboot this, we can rewrite this, just as we rewrite computer programs every day. But these young developers in particular, and the VCs, they don't rewrite any of it. They just use their digital companies really to reify this extractive, monopolistic corporate capitalism, rather than building what almost everybody who touches digital technology, at least at first, thinks is so possible. Instead they develop an app that might be able to connect people in some peer-to-peer way, or some new platform that lets people trade or couch surf or do something. And they go and they get venture capital, and then the venture capitalists tell them how to pivot their business away from this people-serving, peer-to-peer, generative, platform into an extractive Uber, Airbnb, or Amazon that is much more about, how do we destroy markets than how do we create them?
Yeah, and it's a huge issue because, and it's what you're saying is so true, because I have a 2-month-old, well, almost 3 months, and I have a little girl, and then I have a boy who's going to be 2 in February. And the one thing you learn about having kids is that you realize that they're a clean slate. Like, they literally, the way you mold the world is the way they're going to perceive it. And like you were saying, like, people think that, like, these laws, the way our economy has been built, the way, capitalism, and the way our society exchanges money and goods, like, these are all just, laws that weren't, like, it's almost like beyond man, but they were written by man. And it's like, and we can, I could tell my son that, no, you don't trade time the way that, it's not that your time's valuable, you trade goods, or find some other, explain some other way of the economy working, and that could be his norm, his normal, the way he sees. And that's the thing, like, I think every generation that comes up, like, as we can change things just slightly, and they're going to be raised into a world that's just slightly different. And every new generation is a little less brainwashed, as the last generation. It's no different than, like, the whole marijuana thing.
So then we take steps back, though. So my daughter, who's 11 now, was raised in a world where it was normative, not to tease people, or to yell at them for being gay or Muslim or whatever. And she's really confused now to be in a world where the grown-ups are saying that that's okay now. So we haven't yet gotten a whole generation to get raised in a world where, the kinds of values we're talking about have been have been accepted truths. So I don't know. I do agree that it would be great to, raise kids in a world where we understand value, or where they understand even that the buying and selling of human time, didn't, other than for slaves, didn't emerge until, that same period in the late Middle Ages, when it became against the law to have a local business. So instead you had to go work for one of the king's businesses and sell your time instead of selling the value you created. And that's when wage labor was born, and people started to punch the clock. And, as historians will tell us, it's also when the clock went up on the clock tower in the middle of, so these these behaviors, these attitudes become naturalized. And what we're looking at, what you and I are thinking about is, well, we could naturalize other ones. We can create new norms, and someone's raised in a world with those new norms, then they see that as natural rather than the other thing. But I feel like, for as much as we push on the new norms, they get pushed back. And all you need is, some short period of time when it's no longer normal, and it's like that whole house of cards feels like it crumbles, like the progress, goes away, and people return to that more savage or xenophobic or tribal understanding of things.
Yeah, it's I can definitely see that. Like you said, as each generation comes up, there's pros and cons of them kind of seeing things slightly different than the last generation, and every generation has a different thing that is normal to them, and I think we're on the road in a direction that can't be stopped in regards to people just having more access to information than ever before. And obviously, because we have so much access to information, it doesn't necessarily mean it's all good information. It doesn't mean it's all right information. Like you said, anybody can have a blog, anybody can have a YouTube channel, anybody can have a podcast or YouTube channel or blog that looks like news and looks legit, and people will just regurgitate what they read or what they heard and not really fact checked or whatnot. But I think that the good thing is you can see so many conflicting reports and so many conflicting opinions that it's not just a handful of news channels giving you the news. It's not just a handful of newspapers giving you the news. And people can look for information. They can,
Well, it depends who you are. If you are someone who's not truly aware of how Facebook algorithms work, or how your reality tunnel can be dictated by companies that are just looking to titillate you any way possible to get your eyeball hours, then you're not going to be aware that all these stories you read about Hillary Clinton or Obama, that they're not true, that they're made up, that they were paid for by, Russian oligarch disinformationists who are looking to destabilize, the American economy. You don't know that. I feel like I know really smart people or otherwise smart people who believe some really whack stuff.
Yeah.
And it's because people no longer have trusted publications. They go into every news story sideways through some social media channel, and they don't really get that they're looking at little decontextualized tidbits of pseudo facts rather than any kind of reported story. And those pseudo facts are basically telling them that the entities on whom they depended for truth are lying to them. And if someone's going to believe a teeny tidbit thing that says they're lying to you, then a group of people who've been, working for a couple of 100 years at, trying to convey the truth.
Yeah, well, I agree. I think, unfortunately, there are a lot of people who think they look at the facts and then come up with a conclusion, but the truth is they come up with a conclusion, then look at the facts to back that conclusion. And it's true. I mean, the pros and cons, and I guess that's probably the theme of this conversation is the pros and cons of things, is you can kind of find a website to back any established opinion you already have. I mean, during this election year, I've gotten in quite a few debates with people that I thought were pretty reasonable people. But like you said, it's amazing how you can talk to somebody and somebody seems so open-minded and so reasonable in so many issues. But then there's that one issue or that one topic that you get into and all of a sudden they seem completely brainwashed and that all logic goes out the window and they're just not open-minded to see things from other perspectives and give you any credit for maybe a point you might have made. And it's just... It's crazy to me how there's still people like that, and it's hard to break that down. But like you said, it's kind of an unfair fight because you do have the tactics of Edward Bernays and propaganda and this idea of we really don't know what's influencing us and like that documentary The Corporation where They talk about how all the money that's invested in the right music and colors and the psychologists and scientists that go into textures of the of foods and artificial smells and things that stimulate the right just things in your head that you just don't, you're just an average person just going on your everyday and just watching a commercial or eating some snack. You don't realize all the thought and money invested in basically getting you to want this product or getting you to buy more of this product. And I think that we live in a society where, a common conversation we have on the show is, is it people's fault for being ignorant at times, or is it the fault that, we've created a society where people are so overworked and overtired and you live in the East Coast like I do. I live in Massachusetts and near Springfield, Mass, near the Basketball Hall of Fame, and people are so busy with picking up their kids and going to the gym and then finding time to get some work done that they brought home and all their priorities and responsibilities that they really don't have time to research things. And maybe their little one piece of news is that little article that pops up while they check their email online, or Fox News or MSNBC right before they go to bed. They put the kids to sleep. Oh, what's going on in the world? And they watch the news for 2 seconds and then they pass out, and that's their version of the story, that little piece of information they received. So it just it's kind of this thing where like I go back and forth where I'm a blue collar guy. I work a full-time job, and I know how hard it is for me to keep up to date with things and stay educated with what's going on in the world and read books I want to read and watch documentaries I want to watch. And with kids, it only makes it that much harder. And I got lucky that I'm 31. I had kids late in life. You get somebody who has kids early in life, and it's one of those things where just like, well, there goes about all your free time, and you're not going to have a lot of years of finding free time to read and research and get into topics that you maybe don't know too much about. So it's this thing where it's just like, is it the population's fault for being ignorant at times, or is it just we live in a society where we just don't have the time to actually to do research on stuff, so we're more susceptible to propaganda and being brainwashed, or maybe being convinced that this opinion on the story is the correct opinion because we didn't actually research things to find out that opinion was wrong. Well,
I think a lot of it's by design. I mean, when you look at the kinds of conversations that Gregory Bateson and Margaret Mead had with Franklin Delano Roosevelt when the people were going to come back from the war and what they were worried about. They intentionally created a society with many, many false choices so that we would be preoccupied with choice. We would equate choice with democracy, but all those choices would be for different versions of the same thing. So, pick one of these houses, pick one of these laundry detergents, pick one of these cars, but you're all getting the same thing. You just create this illusion of choice, and that's what I just wrote about in my new graphic novel it's called Aleister and Adolf, and it's about what turns out to be the true magical war between Aleister Crowley and Adolf Hitler at the end of World War II. But what I'm arguing in there is that, corporations using what could only be called sigil magic, as their way of kind of conveying their importance to us over time. So I feel like we're quite literally under their spell. They invest their logos and their brands and their mythologies with stuff against which, only semiotician might have any rational defense. So that the only genuine defense against this kind of magical propagandistic assault is your connections to other people and the real world. And when we spend our time so untethered in, these fractious digital spaces, it's very hard to form the kind of rapport and peer-to-peer relationships that keep you grounded, that keep you in reality. we could argue that, oh, look, we're in the real one. Don't worry. Listen to our podcasts. Follow our Twitter streams, because then you'll get the real thing. But, how do they know? How does anybody know? So it resonates. The only way you know it's real is if it's real, is if it's connected to others. So that's why I've been arguing for people to return as much as possible to organic reality. Try to spend time with other people, look in other people's eyes, breathe together. That's the meaning of the word conspiracy. Conspire means breathe with, and that's the way to foist a genuinely people-driven movement against these forces of really tyranny and death and confusion and anti-human sentiment.
Oh, absolutely. There's a great documentary called State of Mind: The Psychology of Control by Free Mind Films, and it was really interesting because it goes all the way back to to the Roman times and Machiavelli and all these people who understood how important it was to control the masses. And like you said, like, this isn't something that's modern, just exclusive to modern times. This is stuff that the ruling power, the elites have used throughout generations and decades of trying to control the masses, and it just, to me, I think we have to, and again, like, you look at this election, what a great job they've done turning people against each other. Everybody who's in the same same class of people. You get the middle class fighting over racism or this or that, and at the end of the day, like every election, nothing changes. It's constantly the same thing. I mean, I definitely, I didn't.
And the thing is, people have been divided by both things. Though. Like, on the one hand, we can complain about the way Facebook divides us, and advertising divides us, or Trump is dividing us or turning us against each other. But on the other hand, on the lefty progressive side, we're also divided. We were divided by the way that cultural and identity politics dominated labor politics, so that we can't even have solidarity with each other. I did a little podcast last week, and it was meant as not as a joke, but as a thought experiment, where I said, what if we all went to Trump's website and applied to be in his administration? He's done, this open invitation at whatever it's called, greatagain.gov, where anybody can apply to get one of the 4,000 positions in the administration that he has to fill. And I said, why don't we progressives go? Why don't we all get in there and try to influence it, as best we can? And if it's really as awful as people are suspecting, at least we could play Schindler's List and try to monkey wrench a machine of tyranny. And I got some angry emails. I mean, one of them was from a woman who said, oh, you can only say that because you're a white man. And I'm like, what? You can only say that because you're a white man. I'm a woman. I couldn't get a job in Trump's administration the way you can because you're a white man. And if I were there, I would be sexually harassed by all those horrible guys who are in it. And I'm like, first off, my grandma says we weren't white until around 1970, when the Jews were kind of officially accepted by white culture as one of them.
Yeah.
And second, you're buying the divisiveness of identity politics. They're not going to let a progressive Jewish white guy radical like me in their administration any sooner than they're going to let you as a woman in there. We're both fighting the same fight, but for you to then say, oh, I'm not going to listen to your podcast anymore because you're not acknowledging me and my plight, it's like, okay, let's be divided then. Let's not forge solidarity. Let's, you go in your little camp of women, and I'll go in my little camp of white Northeastern Jews, and let's not work together. And that's the divisiveness that I think will finally and ultimately bring us down.
Yeah, I had Dave Rubin on my show. This was a while ago before he coined the word regressive left. But at first I'm like, Dave, man, I'm like, well, why are you putting so much emphasis on this? And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, he constantly keeps talking about the regressive left. And the more I paid attention to it, I'm like, you know what? He's kind of right. I mean, it seems like and again, I don't agree with anybody who listens to the show knows I don't agree with either political party. I think that, obviously it's one and the same. It's like Ralph Nader says, it's a two-party dictatorship, but it's one of those things where they are even the progressives are dividing themselves, because you just have infighting and people, who are supposed to be on the same team now fighting, and it just
right. But it's also because it is the impact of neoliberalism. It is the effect of capitalism and big money. On the one hand, it's the big money of Facebook and advertising and creating separate consumer tribes and all that. But that expresses itself to academia and to progressives in the form of nonprofit funding. So you've got these giant nonprofit foundations that are happy to fund, black, lesbian, Southern women and, white, Northern, Chicano leftists. And in each little divided group, nobody's funding the worker. Nobody's funding the whole thing. It's got to be some little targeted, segmented group, and that's the way money maintains its power over people.
Yeah, and I think debt, one thing that people don't emphasize is debt, the power of debt. James Corbett, who's been on the show a few times, he was actually my first guest I ever had on the show, and he did a movie called Century of Enslavement. It was a documentary about the history of money, and it opens up with I think it's one of the opening lines where he says, money is one of those things people kill for. They spend their whole lives trying to get more of. They kill over it. They fight over it. They lose sleep over it, but nobody knows the history of it or where it came from. And it's really interesting because it's similar to things you talk about, just the history of it. And debt is just so powerful because, you look at I never went to college because right out of high school, my dad wanted to start a small little construction company, and he's like, hey, let's give it a shot. He was working construction his whole life. He's like, hey, let's give it a shot. Let's try to start one if you guys want to help me out. But my parents are Portuguese. They don't speak a lot of English. So I was going to help with the paperwork and help with the reading and writing and stuff. So I had the opportunity of kind of jumping in, I guess, for lack of a better term, the real world right out of high school. But there's a lot of kids that go to college, and they come out of college, they're in debt. And now having all that debt means what? Means you have to consistently keep income because you have to constantly pay those bills. Which means you have very little flexibility with moving or searching for another job or deciding maybe you want another career because you're unhappy and all these other things. And it just seems like you just really quickly we grab kids and we're just like, hey, you're fucked now. You're screwed because now you have all this debt and you don't have any real options. You can't really choose a job that makes you happy. You have to choose a job that to keep up with your bills and your debt. It obviously seems well thought out and like it's designed that way, like you said, because obviously the interest rates for college should be the lowest, and they're not. You file for bankruptcy, it's the one piece of debt that doesn't disappear. You have to pay regardless. So it just seems like we get these people stuck in this cycle, and then we become these machines where we just and then we buy the big screen TV to get over the fact that we hate our jobs. Or I know you're a big basketball fan. I'm a big basketball fan too, and or I can't wait to get home to watch the Celtics against Golden State tonight, and that helps me get through my day. Or I go to a game and then I go back to work Monday and I'm back in the routine and all this stuff, and it just seems well designed to keep people just working and not thinking and not exploring. And I don't know what your opinions are on the Montessori schools and stuff. I don't know too much about them, but it's something that I've explored a little bit more recently because of my kids and thinking about maybe putting them in something like that if I can afford it. And and I like this idea of focusing on creativity and focusing on imagination and focusing on provoking thought. And I feel like if you can do that, then the rest will come. There's a teacher friend of mine who made a really good point. He's like, he has a huge issue like myself with like the Common Core and teaching and the way we educate the public. And he's like, we shouldn't teach kids anything they can look up. And I thought about it. I'm like, you make a really good fucking point, man. Like, why should we be teaching kids anything that they can look up? Like, it kind of makes sense. And that's why I think music and arts and anything that sparks creativity, imagination is so important, because those are the things that are but now you get kids going to college and they look for what can I get a degree in that's going to get me the highest paying job. It's not the job that makes me the happiest. It's not the job that I enjoy, but what's the highest paying job? It's one of those things. We live in a society where everything is based on how much income you make, and we like Graham Hancock says, we judge people based on what type of car they drive and not how many rides they're given with that car. And it's I feel like it's a crappy way of thinking. And when we judge, we look at somebody, if you have a daughter, like you said, you have a daughter, most people have a daughter, they start dating a boy, he doesn't have a job. It's like, well, he's a slacker, why doesn't he have a job? But what if he's a painter? What if he's a musician and he's following his love for that art, and and maybe he doesn't have a steady income, but we would prefer the guy who's a lawyer, or the guy who is a broker, or something who makes more money. It's like our whole lives revolve around money. How do we make more of it? Let's hang out and make friends with people who make a lot of it, who can help me make more of it. And I think we have to break this cycle. We have to just break these chains that have been holding us from our true potential.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just it's easier said than done, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, that's...
the whole trick is, not to make people paranoid, but I think it's important that people understand that things are this way by design, not they didn't just happen to be this way. In other words, what you were first talking about in that last section was about how you have to that everybody's in a little bit of debt. And so they have to keep, their eye on the prize and keep working. And this, if you look at the letters between, FDR and his advisors, they were saying quite literally, we have to keep Americans in a little bit of debt, because when you have a mortgage, you're not going to be marching in the street. When you have a mortgage, you want to keep your job. You're not going to quit. So the logic that you're describing, it's not so much a deconstruction of how things ended up. This is the way things are by design in order to maintain control over people. And they were well-meaning at the time. They were concerned that that veterans were going to come back from the war. These guys who have guns and then mental illness because they've traumatized. And how are we going to keep them from going nuts? So they created this kind of Levittown-like society where everybody's got to keep a job in order to maintain, in order to keep paying their debts and build into their retirement. So, and it turns out the long-term result of living that way is you go friggin' crazy, and you start looking at your neighbors as enemies or competitors rather than community members. If you looked at your neighbor as a community member, you're going to share your lawnmower with that person. And if you share your lawnmower with that person, it's one less lawnmower sold, one less job for a lawnmower worker in the factory, and the model that they developed for industrial America falls apart. But the fact is, it did fall apart. And we can either go and say, oh, let's figure out how to get our factory jobs back again, or we can look at what would a low consumption world look like. Could we get by somehow on sharing the abundance we have rather than trying to justify letting people have based on whether or not they have a job?
Well, it kind of sounds like, and I think probably the first time you've been on the show, we talked about this briefly, like kind of the philosophy of the Zeitgeist movement or the Venus Project, this idea that we don't need, not everybody needs one of every product. We could just share things. And, an example of that is look at a gym membership. I go to the gym, like none of us own that equipment. We go there, we share it, and it's there when we need it. And when we don't need it, somebody else can use it. And you can do that with many other things, and we do have to rethink the way we've or the way, like you said, not we created it, but a handful of people created the society and the way things work. And what's your opinions on like a basic income. And also, before I forget, I know some years ago I heard you in an interview and you talked about suburbs and how that was by design, and a little bit of the history about that. Am I correct?
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of what we were just talking about. You know, the Levitt brothers, you know, developed Levittown, which is one of the first suburban communities on Long Island. You know, it was as much a psych experiment as anything else. You know, it was designed, you know, to keep you know, men from congregating with each other. There's no, you know, bars in Levittown. There's no, you know, halls. Everybody is isolated. Each one has their own individual house. They have a garden that they have to upkeep. You know, it was designed to alienate people from one another. You know, the same with the Red Laws, which were designed to keep races apart. You know, in order to maintain stable house pricing and stable mortgage rates. So the whole thing was of design. You know, it's a program that's playing out, and it's not even to judge. The whole point is we can get obsessed with, oh, that's so bad, that's so mean, that's so manipulative. Doesn't matter. You know, they were well-meaning in their own way. They didn't mean to hurt you. But the fact that we've naturalized it, the fact that we see it as the world rather than as a blueprint for social control is the problem. We have to understand that it's a plan, it's a program, it's an operating system, and it can be altered. It can be changed. We've got to get in there and do something about it. That's part of why people voted for Trump, because whether he was able to articulate it or not, he was saying, something's wrong, this is rigged, we've got to break this thing and start over. The thing is, you don't want to break it and start over, because we've had a few thousand years of civilization. There are a lot of good things here too, but we can tweak this thing to be much more fair to humans, and to, you know, give us the possibility of living on, you know, beyond the next century, which I still think is possible. I'm holding out hope that humanity can survive, that we can maintain a planetary climate that's suitable for human life. I believe that is within our reach as a species, and we should dedicate to that.
Yeah, and what's your...
I know that's crazy optimism, but I still believe it's possible.
Yeah, well, I think that I'm kind of optimistic about the future too, because I do think a lot of the young generation and people who are looking at things differently because they do have access to podcasts and documentaries and books and articles and interviews that you've done and stuff like that. I think that it's going to create more open-minded people who are willing to look at things outside the box, and a little harder to be brainwashed. Of course, like we talked about, in some cases there's still going to be people who just are brainwashed, but I think that, you know, I'm pretty optimistic about the fact that the internet gives people the ability to look at so many different things and really make them question. You know, in some cases, even myself, like any of my opinions, I always say on the show, any of my opinions are not set in stone. They all can change. Any of them can change rapidly as I get more information, as I do more research, as I have a conversation with a different guest on the show. I'm constantly evolving and changing, and we all should strive to do that. And yeah, I mean, the future, you talked about, you know, living a more organic life, and you've talked about this before, and I agree with you. I think that people, as we get further away from, I guess, from what we've considered natural and nature and organic for many, many years, the further we get away from that, I think the more people kind of look at that type of life and miss it. And then, because for example, like I'm a cigar smoker, I love whiskey and cigars, and it's more about the community, the having, you know, our phones aside, sitting down, enjoying smells, aromas, you know, paying attention to our palate and stuff that you kind of turn off most of the time because of this quick stimulation that your phone gives you in TV or whatnot. You see yoga getting popular because, well, I believe because it's in a way it's meditation, and it's one part of your day that's actually, you know, you're not constantly being stimulated every 2 seconds with notifications and whatnot. You're actually trying to clear your mind, you're breathing, you're focusing on one thing or nothing. And I think that's a little bit of why people enjoy those things. I think we're getting so overstimulated that people are, looking back and be like, you know what, I don't want to be completely detached from this world. But you call it organic, but in a way, wouldn't you, if us as humans, in the natural world, are creating technology, and as we get closer to technology, and as we become almost more obsessed with being in this virtual reality. I mean, you look at it, you go to a social atmosphere like a bar or something like that, or a concert, everybody's looking down at their phones. They look up, talk for 2 seconds, and they're looking back down on their phones. They'd almost rather be in this screen, in this phone, than be in the conversation or be in the concert or be in the bar where they are at that moment. And it's almost like it kind of, this is where I guess I become a little less optimistic. It kind of scares me because it seems like we're already going in the direction where we might decide that we'd rather be in some virtual, artificial world than being in this organic world.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know that it's a conscious choice that people get to make anyway. I think people mistake one word for the other all the time. It's just they think they're in the real world right now, and they're not. There's not that many moments of the day when you're in the real world. When it's really tricky, and I think people then it's really easy to use very external or superficial measures of, am I in the real world or not? Okay, there's trees. I've gone into nature. That means I'm in the real world. Well, not necessarily. I think the closest thing to the real world we humans have is one another. And if you could be in a social space with other people, that restores or retrieves some of your humanity in a way that a lot of other things. I know like some super rich Buddhist people, and they'll send their kids to Rudolf Steiner or Montessori schools. They get a goat share, and they eat organic food, and they go out to Esalen and in the woods and do these meditations. But they're not in the real world. They're in an insulated cocoon of wealth and privilege, and go to work doing the very destructive things that their other lifestyle choices are compensating for.
Well, it almost seems like the word organic, like you said, it's going to be a very blurry term to define, because if humans are organic and we created technology and we become one with technology eventually, I mean, it seems like that's the direction eventually we're going to end up being, where it's like, why would I, have you seen the documentary series Black Mirror? It's all those, I mean, it's anybody who hasn't seen it, everybody I tell about Black Mirror, they're always like, oh, tell me a little bit about it. I'm like, I don't know what the fuck to tell you about it, because it's so mind-blowing, and each episode is its own mind-blowing version of what a future could look like, and not a future 100 years from now, but a future maybe 20 years from now, maybe 50 years, maybe less than that. It's scary, to think about it. I mean, I don't know if you saw the episode where, you go around and you can rate all your friends and everybody you have interactions with. You can give them 5 stars or 4 stars or whatever. So everybody puts on this fake persona that they're happy and they want to be likable because they want to get those 5 stars. And I'm like, that's not that different than now. People put on pictures on Facebook because they think it's going to get a lot of likes, and they can't wait for their phone to vibrate to see who liked it and who wrote a comment. And I tell my wife sometimes, I'm like, I could put the cure for cancer on Facebook and get 1 like. If I put a who knows, some silly freaking meme or a cute picture of my kids, I get 1 billion likes. And it's not that, obviously, having cute kids, if somebody has cute kids, there's nothing wrong with liking their pictures or whatnot. But it seems like, people are just, it becomes, it molds, I don't know. I don't even know how to put it. It almost seems like you can you based how liked you are and how popular you are all on these little clicks, and which really are meaningless. And you can put this false persona out there where just like, oh, look how happy I am. I know couples that put pictures on Facebook where they look happy, they look like they're enjoying life, but behind scenes are fighting or they're cheating on each other. And it's just like, but you can live in this reality on Facebook that's just completely created by you, and you can just put out the perception that you want people to see. And so it's, in a way, we're almost already recreating things. But it's just, it's a weird world we live in. And I mean, talking about all these different things, having a daughter that's 11, and I mean, so are you optimistic that the future, technology is going to be used for? Because people talk a lot about social anxiety that kids are going to have because they're more comfortable text messaging or writing on Facebook than they are talking in person. I mean, do you think that, with your kids and my kids, I mean, are they going to have those type of issues? Or do you think that, as I guess we always have as humans, we've adapted to phones and cell phones and pagers and TVs and all these things that were kind of man-made, and it took time for us to kind of get used to, and we thought was going to ruin our lives and the future of man, and they didn't. I mean, do you think that, are we at the point where it's just like, okay, this could have some serious effects on humans in the future because technology is advancing much more quicker than humans can adapt to it? Or are you optimistic about that?
I mean, first off, Black Mirror, I mean, the easiest way to describe it is it just takes current technological situations and thinks them through one or two steps further than they already are. So the episode that you were talking about, the idea was not just that people get rated, but then their ability to get a loan or a job or go on a vacation or do anything is dependent on their cumulative rating. So it's not just like today where it's mostly, I want to have a lot of likes because it makes me feel good or makes me feel popular, or is the currency of this weird little world. In the nightmare version in the show, it's what you use, it's your currency in the real world. But the fact is, it already is. There's banks that have been using people's current social media profiles to judge whether or not they're good lending targets. The Chinese government uses it to judge whether someone should get a job or privileges. Are they being loyal to the Communist Party, or are they friends and getting likes from people who are known enemies of the Communist Party? And what are they reading and what's in their feed? So it's already, I mean, the weird thing about that Black Mirror show is most of the things in there are already here. There was something about a candidate, like a joke reality TV candidate who ends up, kind of winning prime minister in England. And of course it just happened in America, where a reality TV star wins a presidential election. As far as the last question there, right now, our technologies are getting smarter about us as we get dumber about them. Every swipe of your smartphone, everything you do on there, your phone and the companies behind it are learning more things about you. But we know less and less about how they use our data and how they're collecting data and how they're influencing us, how the sounds that they make and animations that they show are developed in the Stanford University Keptology Laboratory in order to get us to spend more eyeball hours and be more compliant to the demands of the platforms. So, no, I think that this one is different in that these are technologies that continue to develop and learn after they're released into the world. A rake or a lawnmower or a power plant just sits there. An algorithm gets smarter. It keeps developing. It keeps evolving, even though we may not evolve as quickly as these things do. So I do think it's different. And if we are programming our platforms to extract value from people, if that's what they're here for, extract value from people, figure out how to do it better, and reprogram yourself once you figure that out, that's not a great scenario to be living in. So at that point, your only choice is to start behaving anomalously, to start misbehaving, to start adopting a value set that maybe is different from the values of those around you. And in many cases, just not to use a platform that doesn't feel good. So it doesn't feel good in a long-term way. And to be willing to take the social hit now. Hello?
Hey, Douglas?
Yeah, there you are.
Sorry about
that. You vanished.
Yeah, I don't know if that was you or me, if it was my Skype connection or whatnot. But
Skype probably. I'm almost having to go anyway.
Yeah.
All I was arguing was that we can't see the extractive platforms that we're using as somehow essential to our lives if they're not. And we should feel feel like we have the authority to use the things that serve us and to not use the things that don't. Otherwise you end up really behaving at the behest of these things rather than in control of them. Your technologies are getting smarter about you as you're getting dumber about them. Technologies evolve to learn how to extract value from us in new and ever more efficient ways. They are not like industrial age technologies. You don't just make a program and let it sit there like a power plant or a rake or a shovel. You make a program, an algorithm, and you teach it to get better, to get smarter over time. So these are much more like living things that we're releasing into the world. They're not living, but they're like living things, and they will compete with us for control over the world that we're living in. So use what you use, at your peril, and understand what you're using is for before you integrate it into your life.
Yeah, and there's a short video on YouTube I watched some years ago called "Free is a Lie," and it's all about Google phones and all these free things that we get, this free entertainment, and the idea that it's free. I'm not giving anything up, and this guy really breaks down the information you're giving, which they're selling to marketers and all this stuff. So it's like this idea that we think that we're living in a world where everything's free and we have free music and videos and whatnot, but we don't. There is a price we're paying for these things, and I guess the pro of that is the fact that we do have kids that are growing up in a world where when you and I grew up, we had to save up to buy that CD we wanted. We had to save up to go to that movie we wanted to watch. But kids today are growing up in a world where almost everything that they enjoy, music, movies, entertainment, education, lectures, whatever, they have access to it as long as they have internet. And sometimes they don't even need internet. They can go somewhere that they have Wi-Fi or whatnot, and they have access to all that stuff. And I think the pro in that is that it's taking the power away from the dollar. It's taking away, where my parents were, I was born in Portugal. My parents were immigrants that came to this country. They have this obsession with save every penny, this and that. And they have this respect for money that I think that the younger generation, maybe respect's the wrong word, but this younger generation just doesn't seem to care for the dollar as much as maybe older generations. You hear a lot about kids coming out of college today, and they care more about how much time they have, free time they have, compared to how much money they can make or how much overtime they can get or whatnot. And like I always say, you can make more money, you can't make more time. Those weekends you lose, that you don't spend with your friends, you don't spend with your family, those laughs you don't have, those drinks you don't have, that basketball game you don't go to, whatever it is, you don't get that back. And and I think that people are starting to realize that because they're living in a world where a lot of what they enjoy is free in some sense. So I'm sure there was a
so they got to value, but then they also have to value their time and realize nothing is free. You're spending your time, if nothing else. It's an attention economy, and if you give your attention to something, chances are you're also giving your data to it at the same time. But your time is a fixed quantity. You don't have forever. So think about how you're going to spend it. That's as good advice as any we could give.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Doug. I know it's a Friday night in New York, so I'm sure there's some fun things to do in the city or whatnot, and you don't want to spend it talking to me, and I don't blame you. So thanks a lot, Douglas. I really, really appreciate it. I think the fact that you came on my show when I only had 9 episodes and only a handful of guests, I think is reflects what type of person you are. And for forever, I'll be appreciative of you and those handful of guests that were willing to come on, who didn't know if I was going to stop at episode 10 or make it past 100 like I have. So it's, I very much appreciate.
Oh, good luck to you.
Yeah, thanks. I mean,
good luck and God bless.
Yeah. Thanks, Douglas. Hey, enjoy your weekend, and we'll definitely keep in touch. And let's, I won't wait till 100 more episodes before I have you back on. I'll have you on definitely sooner.
Cool.
Thanks, Douglas.
All right.
Appreciate your time.
Now.
Take
Okay.
care.
Bye.
Yeah, bye. Awesome episode. Everything I said about Douglas at the end of that episode, I truly mean. Great guy. All those people that came on when I just had a handful of episodes, and you can go on iTunes and go online and find a bunch of episodes that only lasted 10 episodes, 15 episodes, 20 episodes maybe. And these people didn't know if I was going to last that long. So people like Douglas and sometimes I look at just my first 20 episodes, and the people who came on, it was awesome. It was just, I think, like I said, it's a reflection of their character, how good of people they are, and how nice they are. So thanks again, guys. I usually say this in the beginning of the show, but I'll also say at the end of the show. If you want to rate the show, please go on iTunes, go on Stitcher, wherever you listen to the podcast. Give me, how many stars you think I've earned from this conversation and this interview. And but I really appreciate anybody who does. I really do, because I know there's a lot more listeners than people who actually go out and take the time to rate the show. Because like myself, I listen to shows and then I just move on in my life, and I don't really think about, let me go on iTunes and rate the show. But if you do, it would be a huge help. It just makes it more likely for people to run into the show in a search engine or whatever. So please do that. Also, our YouTube channel, RV Theory 6, or you can just search the Ripple Effect Podcast, and you can find the episodes on our YouTube channel, which anytime we do a live show, we'll also be streaming on there. So you can check that out, subscribe. And also the Theory 6 Music Project, which is all the music you hear on the podcast. If you want to support the show, you can purchase that music anywhere. You can find digital downloads. Just look up Theory 6, The Ripple Effect, and it's my EP, and you can find that whole EP, or just want to purchase a couple songs or a song. Any money would be helpful, and it goes directly to supporting the show and the music project. Also, I just started a Patreon page, and if anybody wants to donate any money off there, the links will be in the show notes or the show description on our YouTube channel, so you can check that out too. So from the bottom of my heart, guys, I truly appreciate everybody who listens, everybody who takes time to download and refresh their apps to see if there's another episode. I know it's consistent and then sometimes very inconsistent how often I put out shows. So anybody who keeps stays subscribed to the show and the channel and keeps listening, I truly appreciate it. I get feedback every once in a while, and 99% of the time it's positive, and really it's awesome. It's awesome to know that people are listening and people actually want to hear my voice and hear me have these conversations. But more than likely, you want to hear the people I have on, because people like Douglas just really have well thought out ideas and opinions, and every time you hear them talk, it just sparks more ideas and conversations that I'll be having with my friends later. So thanks again, guys. I'll keep this outro. I was going to say intro, but outro short. Enjoy your weekend, or whenever the hell you listen to this show. Enjoy the rest of your day. Hopefully with this podcast, with these conversations, we can make it a little easier to change people's perception and perspective on what life should be and what it should be all about. And I'm sure, like many of you listeners, I would give anything to be doing this as my full-time job. And if I made half the money I make today with my full-time job doing this podcast, I would quit in a heartbeat, if I could make it work, because, it's much more important to be happy. And, if you're happy, then you're a better parent, you're a better wife, husband, brother, sister. It reflects on everything you do, and people see it. Whoever is around you will notice it. And if you're unhappy, it's the same thing. If you hate your job, if you're stressed, then that also reflects on everything and everyone around you. So, let's keep having these conversations. Let's keep hoping that little by little we can change the world we live in. I asked them briefly about a basic income. That's a conversation I'm going to have with them next time, because I think we had them talking about something else. But it's definitely an interesting conversation to have, and would give everybody the opportunity to maybe being a little happier and pursuing things that they love and things that they enjoy, and not just things that give them this currency that keeps them alive and a roof over their head. So thanks again, guys. Rate the show, blah, 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 all those things. Donate the money, some money if you can afford it. If not, completely understandable, because money's tight and it's a rough time. So thanks, and I'll